G'day there, ladies and ledians. Welcome back to Pokemon Links, where we connect dots with theories. Today, I want to talk about a topic that at first glance seems unimportant, but has more to it than you think. The topic being gases. Now, there's probably a fart joke I can make, but I can't quite smell it. In any case, we can be mature about this topic and learn a few things as we go exploring the topic. Now, when we're talking about gases, we are talking about one of the three main states of matter. And so gases will include atmospheric gases, smoke, smog, fog, and so on. We won't be talking about scents such as stench or sweet scent, perhaps another day. But what do the moves and abilities relating to gases mean in the universe of the Pokemon world? That's what we are going to uncover today. The first gas I want to look at comes from the white smoke ability. This ability prevents the loss of stats from the opponent. A very protective gas, that's for sure. Some stat reductions could be considered psychological, such as Intimidate, Fake Tears, or Leer, while others are more physical, such as String Shot or Rock Smash. There isn't really an explanation that would cover all the different stat reductions, but let's move on and circle back to the smoke. Mist is a move that prevents status conditions for a couple turns. Being immune to status elements means a fair amount. From top to bottom, some effects to counter the status effects include antibodies, muscle relaxant, promotion of skin growth, increase in body temperature, clearing of the mind, and energy revitalization. Being surrounded by mist, you would feel super healthy and protected, that's for sure. But those are both white gases. What about black? We have smoke screen and haze. That's about it. Haze and white smoke have similar but different properties. They could be closely related, but nothing is conclusive. At the moment, the best we can say is that there's definitely something in the air, or perhaps that lungs in the Pokemon world react to a variety of gases. With the poison type, we get a few more gases. Poison gas is pretty straightforward, but it is different enough to smog. The main difference being that smog does damage while poison gas does not, which is pretty peculiar. Like, both are negatives to breathe in. They are both very poisonous, but only one of them hurts way more relatively. Compared to poison gas, smog seems like a more potent poison, but it doesn't count as a battery poison. I know a lot of this is part of the game mechanics, but it seems like there is perhaps a middle ground between poison and battery poison. That's pretty cool, I guess. We do have another poison type gas move, and that is Clear Smog. Instead of poisoning, it resets stats similar to haze. Now we have white smoke, haze, and Clear Smog that are all very close in their effects. I think that is enough to say that stat changes are a result of the respiratory system, but physical or psychological, stat changes are caused by disruption in the target's breathing, or perhaps it's reacted to oxygenated blood flow. It means every time you use something like Mud Slap, the foe's heart is maybe skipping a beat, or they let out a gasp as they are shocked. I think that's pretty cool, but there are more gases. Neutralizing gas comes from Coughing's family. This family is interesting enough to maybe get a future vid about them, but for now, we're talking about the ability. So, a gas that suppresses other abilities is pretty powerful. Some abilities are so entwined with a Pokemon's physicality that neutralizing them is akin to a disability. For example, Kakino's color change. Disturbing this effectively removes its stealth capabilities. Slacking's Truant being turned off means that it goes hyperactive, putting a huge strain on its body as it isn't designed for that. And so if we are going with the hypothesis that oxygenated blood is responsible for some unique Pokemon biology, perhaps there are individual organs that innately trigger abilities. Like say if every Pokemon had a spot in their body where it can have between 1 and 3 abilities. If that organ didn't receive enough oxygenated blood, could potentially turn off. And so sending out a coughing is like turning off the selective organ of everyone in their proximity. Very dangerous indeed. Lastly, I wanted to cover fog a bit from the games. Now there are routes where there's very dense fog. The neat part though is that the fog disappears on your birthday. It is both pleasant and mysterious, so let's try to figure it out. Since it only disappears without the defog HM on a split day, every day in the year is a little bit different. Now, on a large cosmological scale, the relationship between the Sun and the Earth changes over time. On a smaller scale though, we can say that each year is roughly the same in terms of the position of the Sun. It changes throughout the year, but it's enough of a pattern to be predictable to us. However, each day would have a small difference even if we don't notice it, and so the Sun has an ever so slight change in light or heat every day. This has me thinking of magnets. For those that may not know, the magnetic poles of our planet slowly shift. At one point what we know as north and south on a magnet was reversed. This does take a very long time though, but it does shift. What's cool about it though is that when a magnet is created, it is synced up to the magnetic poles of the time. It becomes a time capsule of Earth's magnetic field. And so let's put these together. When you take your first breath as a baby human in the Pokemon world, you get attuned to that day's uniqueness. Now, we don't know if the atmosphere is the same in the Pokemon world, so it could be an element we don't know of. In any case, there is a certain composition of elements in the atmosphere. And so, like a magnet of the same polarity, when it becomes this day, your birthday, the fog in the air gets repelled by you. On every other day, the polarity of your body is not synced up, not the same, and so the fog is either ignored by you, or attracted to you in certain locations. That sums up a lot of the gases in the Pokemon world. Let me know if I missed any, or if you disagree with my deductions. I would like to thank you for watching. G'day there, ladies and ledians! Welcome back to Pokemon Links, where we connect the dots with theories. Every region have a few commonalities when it comes to Pokemon. There are early birds and rodents, and bugs, and even later on there are pseudo-legendaries. Every region is going to have at least one of these Pokemon, guaranteed. There is another trait across the regions that is very peculiar though. I'm of course talking about the electric rodents of the generations. Are they just randomly placed there by the developers? Or is there an in-universe reason for their inclusion? That's what we're finding out today on Pokemon Links. So first let's go over the out-of-universe reasons for so many electric rodents. Well, let's just say there is a good reason everyone knows one Pokemon. Maybe you ever asked a fan to name a Pokemon and they respond with Pikachu. Pokemon being as big as it is has its mascot Pokemon, which is Pikachu. You can love him or hate him, but you gotta admit that it's perhaps one of the best mascot Pokemon from Gen 1. Alternative mascots that were possible were Clefairy and I believe Meowth, maybe Psyduck as well, but it's unclear. I'm just imagining a world where we have Clefairy coins instead of Pikachu coins. That'd be interesting. And so Pikachu got the mascot treatment. It was redesigned to be less chunky, and even its cry got changed, which is another topic for another day. So, wanting to get more people interested in other regions or generations, they decided to have more Pokemon that share qualities with Pikachu, that being an electric type rodent. I say rodent because not all of them are mice. We have Pachirisu, which is a squirrel, and Emolga, which is a flying squirrel. Collectively, the Pikachu coins are a bunch of electric rodents designed to recreate a mascot. It is a bit weird that they would be designing more Pokemon to potentially replace Pikachu, but hey, as we all know, Pokemon is pretty successful, so if it works, it works. So, from an outside universe perspective, they are coins just for the sake of marketing or cute interactions. It could also be that they were running out of ideas for single stage electric types and just hit copy paste. But what about from an in-universe perspective? Is there a reason for so many electrical rodents to be in the world? To answer that question, we can look at some of the commonalities of these rodents and extrapolate some possible reasons for the rest of the Pokemon world. So, perhaps the most common thing between these Pikachu coins are their cheeks. Electricity is stored in their cheeks, which resemble a power outlet, and so there would be a functional circuit inside the rodent's body that would allow for the movement of electricity. Put in other words, one cheek is positive, one cheek is negative. For the storing of electricity, their body would have to somewhat resemble a battery. So we're talking metals such as copper or lithium, and maybe also some sulfuric acid or salt. Fundamentally, this makes them steel type adjacent. Togedemaru is also steel type, so it seems to have an affinity for steel type. You can't just have metals inside your body. You need your outside to be metallic. What is interesting, however, is the duo of Puzzle and Minun. One is positively charged, the other is negatively charged. It's basically one Pikachu split into two. On their own, they are barely an electric type. Minun is closer to being electric because electrons have a negative charge, but without the positive charge, they are both effectively a normal or even a ground type. It's only together can they realistically produce any electricity. It does seem to be a bit concerning that the electricity comes from within the rodents. Some Pokemon like Mareep or Electrike use static electricity from their fur to launch at the foes. It being more biological means there is a chemical process for them to acquire their electricity. They could get it directly from the planet though. Whether it's from processing metallic ions from their food or directly getting a spark from the planet, it could be possible for the rodents to acquire electricity from consuming. Morpeko is constantly hungry, meaning a fast metabolic rate, which could also be like constantly charging and discharging. You get what I mean? You might be saying though that they wouldn't be able to get electricity from the planet. Everyone knows that ground doesn't conduct electricity. Well, for the most part you are correct. The reason that we use the planet Earth when it comes to electricity safety is because the planet is very large, so the charge we give it is dispersed across the entire planet, effectively making it nullified electricity. It does mean that it does have a limit of the electricity it can store. Everything is able to conduct electricity just at different rates. If you have an extremely high voltage, even rubber would be conductive. It's just super difficult to do and requires more electricity than it's worth. Very inefficient. Some ground type Pokemon are more of a resistor than they are made of earth. The thick skin of Ranas are resistors as well as bones. Donphan is basically tire and an elephant. Elviskin is very resistant, but the rubber on the Donphan also helps. While theoretically electric types would be able to harm ground types, they are effectively immune to electric type moves. This is a really scary theory though, because following this logic, the planet in the Pokemon games is negatively charged instead of positively charged. Part of the reason why grounding works is because of the massive positive charge of the planet. But with these rodents absorbing the electrons, the negative charge from the planet, it isn't great. Pop quiz. What happens when the planet is negatively charged? That's right, there's disaster. Everything in the field of electromagnetism fundamentally doesn't work the way we know it if the planet is negatively charged. Think about it. Lightning from clouds goes from negative to positive, so there would be no lightning, at least the way we know it. Electricity would not be able to function the same way. Even pigeons would get affected. Homing pigeons are able to locate their home from a tiny magnetic field in their brain, so they know where home is because they basically have a compass in their head. When you mess with electricity, you mess with magnetism. So to have magnets with two Pokemon links in a row, but it's important to talk about. Moving electricity creates a magnetic field, and moving magnets create an electrical charge. This is how we are able to generate electricity, for example. So when the electrical charge of the planet is thrown into chaos, so too would Earth's magnetic field. We wouldn't be able to use magnets or electricity, but let's continue. Without our planet's magnetic field, we would be bombarded by high energy charged particles from solar flares, which would, let's just say, be very bad for the planet. Currently, the magnetic field intercepts these particles, which can be seen by auroras. It happens elsewhere, but it's most commonly visible near the North and South Poles. Needless to say that the Pokemon world would be unlivable. Except they have these electric rodents. With the planet having such a large amount of negative charge, it would be the end. Electric rodents are able to consume this negative charge, would help to fix the situation. By taking the negative charge out, the planet would become mostly positive, which then means that the planet functions normally. And so it could be argued that these Pikachu coins are possibly the most important species in the Pokemon world. Think about this. Between Viridian City and Pikachu City is Viridian Forest. The city is constantly expanded as new businesses emerge and populations grow, but this forest is not destroyed. It could be for the trees, but it's more likely to be actively avoided for the sake of preserving a species. One such Pokemon in Viridian Forest is Pikachu. The people of the Pokemon world are aware of the importance of the electrical rodents. They are the national treasures of the regions, and so maybe there are so many variants because they are necessary around the world. Treat your mascot with respect, and they will protect you. And so that's it for today's theory. Sorry for giving you a lecture on some science, but not many theories use science to help out with theories. I am curious if I have changed your mind about anything in the Pokemon world, or if I told you at least one thing you didn't know before. Please, share your comments below. I would like to thank you for watching. G'day there, ladies and ledians! Welcome back to Pokemon Links, where we connect the dots with theories. There are a bunch of items in the Pokemon world. Held items, evolution items, Pokeballs. But today I would like to focus on one item that we all have used but haven't really thought about. That is, of course, the humble Repel. This spray can has some interesting world-building implications. So let's dive into it, shall we? So first, a refresher. A Repel comes in 3 different qualities. Repel, Super Repel, and Max Repel. They, as the name implies, repel Pokemon so that you can travel safely. But there is more to this basic item. Have you ever thought about what Pokemon they might be made from? That might come as a shock to you. Surely they are made from a plant or something, right? Don't tell me that they blend up a Pokemon for this. Don't worry, it's nothing like that. Trust me. It honestly shouldn't be a surprise to know that it comes from a Pokemon. There are sentient plants, rocks, and keys. Honestly, finding anything that isn't secretly a Pokemon is a miracle. But in any case, it would make sense that this abundant item would be a Pokemon product, similar to eggs or milk. Made from Pokemon, but not necessarily of Pokemon. And so I guess if you are a vegan in the Pokemon world, firstly that really limits what you can eat. But secondly, you shouldn't use any repels. And so the topic becomes, what Pokemon would you make repels from? Is there a perfect Pokemon, or are there many? I will now explain. So our first criteria would need to be a Pokemon that inspires fear or disgust. Wild Pokemon are always willing to fight to the death when provoked, so something that encourages them to stay as far as possible away from you would be needed. And so the most obvious type would be Poison, as they have naturally noxious odours. However, you would be close but not quite there. You see, this needs to be from a type that is universally a fan of Pokemon. Steel types and Poison types just don't really care about Poison type Pokemon. So maybe we can't go the disgusting route. But we can use Fear. In terms of invoking Fear, we do have the best contender in the Dragon type. Even the sturdiest Steel types would shudder at the sight of a rampaging dragon. There is, however, the Fairy type. Maybe you're saying checkmate at the screen, nodding along to the sentence. You would be wrong. You see, while the Fairy type would be immune to dragons, they would still run from one. Fairy types strike me as more aloof than other types, carefree, simple, skittish perhaps. The sight of an angry dragon would still cause fear, even if they can't be hurt from them. Perhaps a shift in perspective will help. Have you ever been to a haunted house, and you know it's a cheap carnival attraction? You know that you aren't going to die. Hopefully. But within the atmosphere of the house is a foreboding experience that causes you to be on edge and be frightened of someone in a mask. It's the same kind of thing. Once you're aware of the danger of something, you can use the reasoning to decide if it's something dangerous or if you can just ignore it. Being hit by something will tell you how much you should avoid it. But if you never get hit by it, you wouldn't know that. In your mind, it would still be dangerous, but you would never know. Why chance it? The one time you don't dodge a knife might be the one time that it isn't made of rubber. So, despite the Fairy type being immune to Dragon type attacks, if there was a rampaging dragon, you better believe they would be scared. And so now we have spent some time just to narrow it down to the Dragon type. Now to find which one best suits the design of the Repel. Well, part of the way that Repels work is that it prevents weaker Pokemon from attacking. It stands to reason that the higher level of the Dragon type, the better suited it would be. Pop quiz! I know that there is someone out there that loves multiple choice. Which of these Pokemon would be the best Pokemon to get Repels from? That's right, the answer is Goodra. Comment down below if you got this correct. While levels are important, there are other factors at play here. These other dragons, how hard would you say it is to collect ingredients from? Pretty hard, right? They are aggressive by nature. You wouldn't be able to have a large scale production using their scales or anything like that. Goodra is much more manageable to collect ingredients from. Its tendency to be docile or friendly goes a long way to being a farm animal. Can you imagine if cows were carnivores that could jump over fences and attack on sight? Wouldn't be pleasant. And if you think about it a bit more, it is the perfect fit. Not only are there 3 stages, which determine the Repel's potency, but with Goodra you can just add water and collect slime. Setting up irrigation for a moisture farm would be relatively simple. Not only that, but the slime is somewhat corrosive, which will cause any Pokemon to second guess their battle choices. I know that I don't like using info from the Pokedex, but I think this works well enough. I'm not going to agree with the slime dissolving everything, but it being somewhat corrosive or acidic makes sense. For the Pokemon, it would experience fear and a bit of disgust from the pseudo-poison type. They will get that tingling sensation when you smell something awful. Overall, I think Greedra is the perfect Pokemon to create repels from. Before we move on, I would like to clarify something. In Pokemon Links, I like to imagine that these fairies are Easter eggs created by Game Freak, little truths that have been hidden for so long. The repels that were introduced in Gen 1 were definitely not thought of being connected to Greedra from Gen 6. It doesn't make sense according to external chronological order. If we consider in-universe chronological order, then it does make sense. Kalos had a war 30,000 years ago, also Greedra is in Ancient Sinnoh. I think it's fair to say that this theory is possible. Now back to the discussion. So now that we know how and what the repels are made from, how do they work in-universe? Firstly, repels deter Pokemon based off the first member of your party. It's honestly pretty hard to justify, but here's what I've come up with. The repel is sprayed on the player, not the Pokemon. Perhaps the instructions on how to use it say to spray it on your hands. The first Pokemon in your party is perhaps the most convenient spot to throw it out quickly, with other Pokemon taking some time. If you are being cautious enough about using a repel, you might have your hand on that first Pokemon, ready to defend yourself from vicious Pokemon. Touching the Pokeball passes the repellent smell to the Pokeball. From there, the scent permeates through the Pokeball and mixes with the Pokemon's body. The Pokemon with a higher level, a stronger body, amplifies the effect of the repel, making Pokemon that are not as strong feel like there's a powerful, corrosive dragon nearby. Do not approach. Run away before it's too late. As for the steps until it runs out, does that make sense? Shouldn't it be based off time? Well, time is wacky in the Pokemon world. Check out here for more info. However, we are able to equate steps to time using two different sources. Eggs use steps to hatch, simulating time. There is also the poison condition, travelling through the body as they're trying to walk. So it isn't too shocking to say that moving with repellent active will reduce its effectiveness. And so that's my explanation and theory of how repels are made and how they work. You can let me know if this theory makes sense to you or if there are any glaring holes in this idea. I wonder if people do vegan runs where they don't use repels in other items. What those items are will need to be seen, perhaps in another Pokemon Links. I would like to thank you for watching. G'day there, ladies and ledians. Welcome back to Pokemon Links, where we connect the dots with fairies. Now, we all have those Pokemon in mind that we think are filling or padding. I will make a random vid about the baby Pokemon, that's for sure, but there is one group of Pokemon filler that seems to have no emotional response to. I am, of course, talking about the elemental monkeys. There isn't really any theories about these monkeys, probably because nobody cares to remember them. Like, seriously, if one of these is your favourite Pokemon, you know what? I think you'll enjoy this video. Let's figure out what kind of monkey business these simians get up to. So, for starters, who are these Pokemon? These are monkeys introduced in Gen 5, and their names are simplistic. You got Sage for grass, Seer for fire, and Paw for water. And then you have Pan for the small monkeys, and Semi for the large ones. So we have Pan-Sage, Pan-Paw, and Pan-Seer, evolving into Semi-Sage, Semi-Paw, and Semi-Seer. Got it? Good. Besides their names, they are pretty similar in design, moveset, and abilities. It really feels like a copy-paste of these Pokemon. But there is something more to know. These monkeys are inspired by the teachings of the three monkeys. The three monkeys see no evil, speak no evil, and hear no evil. On a basic level, it means that if you choose not to engage with negativity, you will not be negative. It's a way to, in a sense, remain pure-hearted and optimistic rather than filled with negative emotions. To stop the spread of evil, try to focus on the positives. That's the gist of the lesson. When taken to the logical extreme, these monkeys are blind, deaf, and mute. What better way to hear no evil if you can't hear anything at all, for example? So the three monkeys are somewhat represented by the elemental monkeys. And no, Grookey is not included. Pan-Paw is see no evil, Pan-Seer is hear no evil, and Pan-Sage is speak no evil. So the first thing we need to do is see how well they embody the three monkeys. First up is going to be Pan-Paw. The eyes of Pan-Paw and Semi-Paw are different compared to the other monkeys, but eyes in the Pokemon world come in all shapes and sizes. Is it fair to say that Pan-Paw is blind? Not really. Pan-Paw is able to learn the move Leer. You know, the move where you stare at your opponent? I think it's safe to say that Pan-Paw is not blind, and therefore can see evil. Pan-Seer and Semi-Seer is hear no evil, which is a stretch because you would think that they would have smaller ears rather than bigger ears, if they were supposed to be deaf. I guess the bigger the ears, the easier it is to receive sound, so a deaf Pokemon might have big ears, but it can go either way. On a design level, there is nothing to suggest that Pan-Seer might be deaf. What does the game data say? Well, it doesn't have the sound ability, which would be perfect for a deaf Pokemon. Pan-Seer is not deaf, and so can hear evil. Finally, we have Pan-Sage and Semi-Sage. This Pokemon is supposed to represent Speak No Evil. This is definitely the weakest link. All I will say is that its Pokemon cry are some monkey mouth noises. It's not like it's communicating by shuffling or using its body like a drum. Pansage is not mute, and so can speak evil. Believe it or not, there are still some mysteries around these Pokemon. Where would they be in the wild? Would they be together or separate? My first thought was that they are similar to Eevee. Maybe they have a hidden monkey baby that turns into one of the three elements, but that wasn't really going anywhere. Instead, I wanted to understand what they do in the Pokemon world. So first up, I think these monkeys would stick together. The first reason is because if they're at least partially disabled, they would be better off together than alone. That being said, communication between them would be difficult. Partially blind monkey communicating with a partially mute monkey would be difficult, for example. Besides that though, having a balance of the three main elements is always good. Fire, water, and grass is a balance that ensures the landscapes are not abundant or scarce of life. So the elemental monkeys sitting together seems plausible. Now where would they belong? For this we need a location that has equal parts fire, water, and grass. My first thought was the Fugo Ironworks area in Sinnoh. So many flowers, a freshwater stream, and of course the Ironworks for fire. But the Ironworks is more man-made than natural, so it isn't going to be this spot. That only leaves one location where they could reside, and that is of course, Lava Ridge Town. Think about it. There's a volcano nearby, hot springs, grass, a pretty even balance between these elements. This is the perfect spot for these monkeys to live in harmony. So, what's the theory? Well, whether you are focused on the disability aspect or the elemental aspect of the monkeys, either way, they teach the importance of unity. Using their cooperation, the elemental monkeys worked with the humans to develop Lava Ridge Town. Given their ability at gluttony, it wouldn't surprise me if the monkeys were expecting food in return for their help. The food that Lava Ridge produces is, of course, the lava cookie, so it seems pretty straightforward. Cookies are for monkey help. Everyone was happy for a while. The amount of time it takes is up to you, but eventually there will be trouble. The people of Lava Ridge strike me as a nonchalant type. Very relaxed, or stressed kind of people. What is there to worry about when you can just relax at the hot springs? It will melt your worries away and heal your weary bones. We don't need the monkeys anymore. Why should we give our food to them? Everything is fine here. This kind of mentality causes the monkeys that help them to move on to finding other people who would benefit from them so they can eat without battling wild Pokemon. Without the monkeys, the recipe for the cookie starts to fade. Why do you think it is that an elder gives you a cookie? That person is probably the last generation that knows the recipe, or that knows how the town was developed. Without the assistance of these monkeys, the balance of Lava Ridge would be vulnerable to changing conditions. Not great when you have legendaries that alter this balance to the extreme. And so I guess the main aspect of this theory is that Lava Ridge is slowly decaying without the help of the elemental monkeys. It is possible that with their help, that Lava Ridge would be more prosperous and there'd be more hot springs around, but now the town is slowly collapsing in on itself, and the people are in a depressive cycle of washing away their stress in the hot springs rather than do anything to restore the balance. Their skin in the town are slowly wrinkling away. As for the monkeys, new lands await. They are traveling around the world to find another place of equilibrium. They are searching for people to teach and to eat from. Although they are not gods by any stretch, the monkeys are positive guardian beings of nature. Being a pure type, evolving from an elemental zone and having Torrent, Blaze, and Overgrow as a hidden ability means that they are close to being an elemental Pokemon. While not being an elemental in form, they are an elemental in function. They ignore the evils of this world and continue to travel and help keep the world pure-hearted. That's it for my theory. Let me know if I've changed your mind about these Pokemon. Do you respect them, or do you still not care about these monkeys? Are there any spots where you feel like these monkeys could belong? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. G'day there, ladies and ledians. Welcome back to Pokemon Legends, where we connect adults with fairies. Some of the people in Legends Arceus are weird, aren't they? I'm not talking about their personality. I'm talking about how they look similar to characters in more modern Sinnoh. Very similar. Now you might brush it off as a reference, or perhaps it's a timeline or alternate world thing, and I wouldn't blame you for thinking that. Personally though, I think it goes much deeper. So I'm going to be uncovering the secrets that Game Freak is trying to hide. Let's figure out what's really going on with these faces. So to start off, we need to see if this is possible without any fantasy elements. Could a near-perfect replica of a face show up down your family lineage? To answer that, we turn to the Punnett Square. This is a representation of how we determine our characteristics from our parents. Basically, for any given features such as hair colour or whether you have connective tissue for your earlobes and whatnot, you have 2 chromosomes. When creating a baby, 1 chromosome from each parent is passed onto the child. Each chromosome has its own, let's say, power scaling. There are always going to be chromosomes that are stronger than others. The strongest of the 2 chromosomes inherited is what is able to be seen, while any weaker ones are carried on for the future. When 2 people have the same weak chromosome, it is possible that they combine for the child. This is how we have more genetic variety. 2 white people could have a black baby if they both pass on a black chromosome, for example. We can talk more about this, but I think you know enough. So even if we assume that the exact faces of the Pokemon world were the weaker genes, it wouldn't be able to be passed on because the other parent wouldn't have it. It's a really specific thing that is beyond the typical scope of chromosomes. Who knows, maybe the Pokemon world works differently, and that there are people with the Cyrus chromosome. But I doubt it. So then how does this work out in-universe? There are a lot of ways to account for it in fiction. Clones, immortals, reincarnation, ultimate timelines, altering fate. You name it, it might be possible. But I think typical ancestry can work, we just need to think outside the box. The first way it could be possible is with some kind of DNA corruption, such as interacting with deoxys. That definitely would throw a wrench into your family lines, but it's not exactly a common Pokemon. So, our second option is maybe some super chromosomes. It definitely could work if there was a weak chromosome that dominated the other weak chromosomes until it finds the sweet spot of the right strength. This would then cause the child to have an identical facial structure to those in the past. How might this be possible? I think we have an answer in the Pokemon Xerneas. The life force of Xerneas would allow for certain aspects of life to be enhanced, such as a chromosome. The question is though, is there a way to connect Deoxys and Xerneas for a fully detailed explanation? Yes. Yes there is. You see, in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, we get a Delta episode, where the plot is to deal with a meteor that's coming. Little do they know it has Deoxys, but let's circle back to that. Now, supposedly, the meteor is 6 miles in diameter, or close to 10 kilometers for us metric folk. Considering this is about 10 times the size of other moonites that we've had to deal with, they aren't joking when they say it will destroy the Pokemon world. Granted, the Pokemon world is not to scale, so we don't know how big it is, and based off this image, it doesn't look too big compared to the player and the planet. That's the story for that episode. What we are connected with is Dalvin plans to use Infinity Energy and a link cable to transport it to an alternate dimension. This is insane. They really just wanted to add a link cable, something that doesn't exist in-game. It's an out-of-game value and just duct tape it onto pure life force energy. Time space shenanigans have been around since Gen 1, but this is really out there. Infinity Energy is our main concern, as it is energy released from the ultimate weapon from X and Y. It comes from Xerneas or Yveltal, and is responsible for immortality and mega evolution. Needless to say that it is very potent stuff. So we got Infinity Energy and Meteor. Let's build the connection between Xerneas and Deoxys even further. We have two different factions around the Pokemon World timeline that are relevant to this theory. The first is the people that use Infinity Energy during the war, so AZ. And the second is the Draconid people that know about the meteor and tend to Rayquaza. A coincidence? I think not. I believe these people are connected. Let me explain. So, a long time ago, there was a tribe that looked after the stars and saw something amiss. One of the stars faded for a second. This prompted the tribe to stare at the stars and try and find out what was happening. After many nights of stargazing, the people saw that a meteorite was headed for their world. There was nothing that a human could do against such a thing, but there was a Pokemon. So, a group from the tribe set out to find the Pokemon that could save humanity, the Xerneas. Eventually, when they found Xerneas, they barely managed to communicate to the Pokemon with each hand. The Xerneas agreed to help out by cloaking the tribal folk and itself in energy that it used to shoot at the meteor. Upon touching the meteor, that secretly held a Deoxys. The corrupted DNA of Deoxys contaminated the energy, affecting Xerneas and the tribal folk. The meteor was pushed away, never to be seen again. Damage was done, however, as Xerneas needed to rest to recover its energy and to restore its DNA. The tribal folk were not able to do that, causing their descendants to look like them. As the crisis averted, the tribe looked to alternative methods of protecting the planet while Xerneas slumbered. During Xerneas' sleep, energy was sucked from it to be used as a weapon, causing Infinity Energy to be scattered worldwide. Certain Pokemon reacted more strongly to Infinity Energy, causing a painful transformation. Upon realizing that the strongest Pokemon in the sky reacted to Infinity Energy, the tribal folk, now calling themselves the Draconid people, served as dragon. With enough Infinity Energy, perhaps the next meteor would be destroyed instead of pushed away. The super chromosomes from Xerneas and Deoxys would persist until it would reoccur. The chromosomes sent out a frequency that attracted other Deoxys and meteorites to the planet. Whenever a Deoxys gets close to the planet, the super chromosome increases in strength, creating offspring that look like the original tribal group that would last in Infinity Energy. 150 years ago, a Deoxys meteorite, a Deoxyrite, if you will, came close to the planet, but wasn't quite on the correct path, leading to a generation of folks that look familiar. While modern day Deoxyrite is destroyed, you should always be on the lookout for these faces, as when you see them, know that it's time for dragon to rise. I like this theory a fair bit. It gives a bit of context as to how AZ just happened to use Xerneas, as it was just resting. For those of you talking about how Pokemon Y is also canon, just shush, okay? It makes sense for the ultimate weapon to use Xerneas Infinity Energy for good, then evil, than it does to make sense for Yveltal, right? If you want a more neutral answer, we can go with Zygarde for pushing away the meteorite. As a being that's meant to keep life and death in balance, it makes sense for it to have Infinity Energy as well. It would also explain how its cells are scattered, as it's from dealing with the Deoxyrite. Anyway, that's it for my theory. It's pretty cool that something as simple as faces being similar could lead to the fate of the planet. This was kind of a semi-special episode about Pokemon links. The main thing was that I wanted to get this out before the paper presents next week. Let me know down below if this theory makes sense, or if there's anything I missed. Thank you for watching. G'day there, ladies and ledians. Welcome back to another episode of Pokemon Links, where we connect the dots with theories. I think we can all agree that Lapras is a Pokemon that none of us hate, right? It's so gentle and cute, and its Pokédex entries are tragic. Honestly, if you're a Lapras hater, stick around as we find more of your kind. Yes, today we are uncovering what happened to Lapras. Was it a small group of hunters, or was it something larger? How do you even hunt such a Pokemon? We will be solving the murder case of nearly an entire species today on Pokemon Links. So, for starters, I know I'm not much of a Pokedex guy. I just don't fully trust it to give reliable information. But with Lapras, I can believe what it says to be true. Lapras in the Pokedex is gentle, sings to find others, ferries people across water, and was hunted to near extinction. This is more believable than, say, I don't know, that it flies on auroras or that it was sculptured from an iceberg, for example. This is something that could feasibly happen. So, let's figure out what happened. Let's start by focusing on who would use Lapras for its ferrying capability. I doubt there's a spot in the Pokemon world where you would need to have a daily commute by Lapras, and in a world where boats are not a thing yet, I don't think Lapras would be used for colonization purposes. So, I think that Lapras were utilised for a business aspect. Lapras is large enough to carry a person and a large container, possibly like a backpack basket kind of thing. It wouldn't be too light on the logistics side, definitely improved with technology, but based off the timescale and terrain, it could be worthwhile to use Lapras. How might Lapras be used on demand? Well, if they sing to find other Lapras, it wouldn't be too out there to suggest that the right frequency could attract the Lapras. For example, humans might be able to whistle at a specific tone to get a Lapras nearby. From there, it's the carrot and stick treatment, maybe some reins and you're good to go. Some humans being able to use Lapras on demand seems pretty reasonable. Now let's discuss the trading business. So, if Lapras is a vehicle for business trade, who is in this trade deal? Well, with Lapras being fine in rigid waters, we need a place that is cold and has water. Otherwise, other Pokemon such as Kendra would be used. We just so happen to have a cold place of a port in Snowpoint City. It makes sense that if Snowpoint were to develop in such a harsh location, that it would be through trade. I doubt it could grow into the city by itself. Our trade partner needs to be someone that needs the export of Snowpoint, pine trees. The question becomes, who needs pine trees? The answer may surprise you, but I would say Dendemil Town in Kalos. Dendemil is another cold location, and so would need cold-resistant wood to develop their town. You might be asking, what about Dendemil's own pine trees? Well, put simply, they can't afford to remove trees. With severe snowstorms, they need every piece of protection they can get. Dendemil's own pine trees are used as shelter so that they don't get snowstormed out. They still need wood, but can't take from the nearby areas, so request some wood from Snowpoint. Not to mention that Dendemil has a windmill, so potentially this would be used to move machinery, such as processing logs. Snowpoint is supplying raw goods, a barrel of wood. Dendemil is processing such goods. Dendemil gets wood for production, Snowpoint gets money or food for their growth. It's a win-win situation. Obviously, Dendemil doesn't have its own port, so the wood carried on Lapras would go to Coumarine City, where it would then be shipped off to Dendemil Town. So, we now have a trade deal that involves Lapras. How would the Lapras get endangered? Let's consider some things. Based off the games, if they were to be traded as fact, it would be impossible for any Pokemon to go extinct. Entire boxes of eggs could be made within minutes, there isn't any resources that go into hatching an egg and getting a new Pokemon. You don't need to feed it or wait for it to grow, there is no grace period between eggs, you can just keep pumping them out. Needless to say that this logic would not hold up in the actual world of Pokemon, but if you do want to be super technical about it, then I don't blame you. I will not be using this logic, I want to find a more natural solution. Lapras strike me as peaceful creatures that travel around the world. It's likely rare that they meet one another, so staging a large-scale hunt on these Pokemon would be difficult. I think Game Freak were trying to have parallels to whales in our world and how they are systematically hunted for resources. This doesn't sit right with me. There are definitely better avenues for food in the Pokemon world. Berries grow within a week, and in some instances produce berries every few days. Also, in a world where Lapras is seen as a viable mode of transportation, I doubt that larger vessels would be used. And so, another way you might target Lapras is by targeting its food. If you were to target the fish that Lapras eat, you would indirectly cause Lapras to be extinct. This also doesn't seem right to me though. I wouldn't exactly describe this as a hunt for Lapras, this does leave me with one more thought. Suppose that throughout the trade route between Snowpoint and Dendemil that there's another party that is involved. It could be that this other party decided to poison the trade by hunting Lapras through the route. Which region could it be? Alola is very pro-Pokemon, the Lapras there are chilling with humans, so it's not them. Perhaps there is a clue in its availability in the games. Well, wouldn't you know it, you can find Lapras pretty commonly in Lake Mylok in Galar. So now all the pieces are in place. At some point, Lapras were used as a trade vessel with a human carrying a load of wood to be delivered to Coumarine City. On the way is a larger landmass called Galar. Instead of going around it, it was easy to go through Galar. The horizontal stream here could have been more open to the ocean in the past, effectively having two connected islands as the Galar region. The Lapras would go through this channel and stopping at Lake Mylok for a rest. Here is where the Galar people turned on the Lapras and by extension had a conflict with Sinnoh and Kalos. They shifted dirt so that Lake Mylok would be closed off, trapping the Lapras inside. All the Lapras in a confined space was not good for their health. The food chain would be disrupted, for example. Too many predators, not enough prey. Slowly but surely the Lapis would get weaker and weaker, allowing for the people of Galar to hunt them a lot easier than battling a healthy Lapis in the wild. The majority of the Lapis died from this event, but a few would be able to survive as the predators and prey dynamic were somewhat equalized. A businessman, let's call him Mylok, after the lake, saw the potential for tourism based on the small amount of Lapis. They could be turned into a myth. Similar to how people still believe in the Loch Ness Monster, the people of Galar would believe in the Mylok Pras survivors. Not all the Lapis would have suffered in this trap. There are still Lapis roaming the world freely. Perhaps times are different in the Pokemon world, but every Friday in Union Cave, the water and wind is just right to let out a whistle, attracting a wayward Lapis. Nowadays, with much focus around the world, Lapis numbers have been restored to a safe level that this gentle giant deserves. That's it for my theory. I doubt Game Freak intended Lapis to be interpreted this way, but it does contribute some nice world building for the Pokemon world. Let me know if my theory makes sense, or if there's something I have missed. Thank you for watching. I will see you later. G'day there, ladies and ledians. Welcome back to Pokemon Links, where we connect the dots with theories. There are some evolutions out there that make you question the world of Pokemon. Some we will cover in future episodes, but of all the types in Pokemon, the bug type stands out the most interesting. You've got the split Evo of Wurmple, the trait evolution requirements of Carablast and Charlotte, just everything surrounding Burmese family, and of course, the topic of today's video, Shedinja. What is the deal with this Pokemon? Is it even a Pokemon at all? This strange bug is the focus of today's episode of Pokemon Links. So Shedinja is a highly speculated Pokemon for two main reasons. The first is because it's the only Pokemon to have 1 HP. The second is because you obtain it through a very peculiar method. You see, Shedinja is related to Nincada, but does not directly evolve from Nincada. It does sound strange, but you get a Shedinja when you evolve a Nincada into Ninjask. If you have a spare slot on your team, you get a bonus Pokemon, a Shedinja. There is no fanfare or message about it, you just open your party and see a weird husk Pokemon. It almost feels like a hidden Pokemon or a faulty code, something you aren't supposed to see. It would be cool if this happened with other Pokemon, but I digress. With only 1 HP, Shedinja by all accounts is a husk of a Pokemon. Add on the Ghost type and that strange halo thing above its head and the entire Pokemon becomes a mystery. As strange as it is though, I think there is a completely reasonable explanation for this little ghostly bug. Now, while we could look through the Pokédex and be concerned about what we find, I don't think it's necessary. We just need to connect some dots and think outside the box. The first thing about Shedinja is that the husk isn't something entirely new. There are a few moves that the majority of Pokemon can learn. Think of Protect or Toxic for example. Moves that Pokemon can learn so that anyone could have a chance to win. One such move is the move Substitute. This move uses the Pokemon's HP to create an impenetrable, except from sound, shell that absorbs damage. With Shedinja's Wonder Guard being a very defensive ability, and the uniqueness of Shedinja having 1 HP, there are a few commonalities with the Substitute dog. Add on the fact that you can still use other moves while a Substitute is up, and how that compares to Shedinja still having the ability to battle, I think there are enough parallels to say it's plausible that Shedinja is a form of a Substitute. With the majority of Pokemon able to learn Substitute, it could be said that Substitute is a part of the DNA of Pokemon. This is important for later. So now we have a framework for what Shedinja is. Why is it only Nincada that does this? How is Shedinja formed from only 1 Pokemon? You can buy the answer cheap at any Pokemon. Yep, the number 1 trend item, the Pokeball, is the cause for Shedinja. As we know through various media, Pokeballs are created by the use of apricorns, a fruit in the Pokemon world. You might say that we only know about this from Legends Arceus, so this connection wouldn't be intended by Game Freak. Perhaps that would be true if not for Kurt from Gen 2. Kurt turns apricorns into Pokeballs. Since Shedinja was introduced in Gen 3, this connection could be possible as the apricorns would have been established prior. So, now we have a fruit or a Pokeball. So what? Well, part of the Pokemon DNA allows for Pokemon to shrink into Pokeballs. If you throw a Pokeball at a human, it would bounce off. It's also why trainers are able to touch Pokeballs without concern. In our world, there are people with some really weird allergic reactions to mundane things. Is it possible that there's a Pokemon that is allergic to apricorns? Perhaps allergic is the wrong word. How about atypical reactions? If Nincada reacted differently to apricorns, the main ingredient of Pokeballs, perhaps that causes Shedinja. So here's my theory. At some point during the evolution process, Nincada experiences an atypical response from being inside the Pokeball, which causes the substitute part of its DNA to act in a strange way, thus creating a Shedinja. By extension, we can hypothesize that Shedinja are not a natural Pokemon, as Nincada and apricorns would never interact naturally. This means that Shedinja is an artificially produced Pokemon. There is of course one question about this theory that needs to be raised. Why does a Pokemon have to be in a Pokeball during evolution? Surely this can happen without an apricorn or a Pokeball, right? Let me ask you this. Have you ever seen an evolution in the Pokemon games in your location? No. It's always an undefined void. Despite all the advancements throughout the generations, you don't evolve a Pokemon in your surrounding area, do you? This void could be interpreted as a point of view inside the Pokeball. Pokemon also don't evolve during battle. It's only when they are back in the Pokeball do they evolve. At least for the trainer. Wild evolutions are definitely implied, but how many times have you seen a wild Shedinja? Outside of capturing via Power Park, the only place to catch a Shedinja is in Galar. This could disprove my theory, but it could also be that with the somewhat advancement in time, as the generations continue, that the wild Shedinja are previously owned. Pokemon trainers like the player have already caught the Nincada and evolved them. And it's not as though the player is the only person in the world to release a Pokemon, right? So really the only mystery left about Shedinja is how it slithers into another Pokeball. Well, similar to hatching eggs and spawning a Pokeball for those Pokemon, this is probably something to sweep under the rug. Who knows, maybe I'll check under this rug in a future episode. So that's it for my Shedinja theory. It may be a somewhat simple theory, but sometimes the most convoluted issues have an easy solution. This is definitely a plausible connection that Game Freak have tried hard, but what do you think? Is there any parts that you don't agree with, or maybe you're inspired with your own theory? Let me know in the comments below. I would like to thank you for watching. G'day there, ladies and ledians. Welcome back to another episode of Pokemon Links, where we connect the dots with theories. What I find fascinating is looking at an evolution line and just kinda questioning it. Does it make sense between the evolutions? How would the Pokemon's life alter some drastic changes? Now, while there may be many Pokemon that should be questioned, there is a feeling that at first glance doesn't make sense. That family line is going to be the Abra line. So, let's get into it, shall we? Now, of course, we start with Abra. Duh. It's a little baby-looking creature with closed eyes and some armor? Strange enough, but let's continue. Now, Abra are most famous for their teleportation, quick to flee if it encounters anything hostile to it. I could talk about how teleport is a subset of spatial control, but this video isn't about it. Maybe another vid, but not for now. Overall, there is nothing particularly glaring about Abra's design, so let's check out the other end of the line, Alakazam. Now, Alakazam is definitely what I would call the logical extreme of Abra. The head gets more pronounced, still wearing the armor that Abra was wearing. Perhaps a major difference between them is that Alakazam has two spoons. I think overall Alakazam is also a pretty solid design. So now let's check the connecting link, shall we? What is this? Kadabra looks kind of out of place compared to the other two. For the most part, it seems to be a pretty seamless transition from Abra into Alakazam. Like, you have the majority of Kadabra's design being a mix of the younger form and older form. However, it has a star shape on its head and a weird stripe pattern on its abdomen, not to mention the massive tail, which is perhaps way too big. Also, Kadabra has one spoon. What is going on here? Before I continue, Kadabra was banned from the TCG for a long time due to copyright claims about similar appearance and inspiration from Yuri Geller. Hope I'm saying that correctly. But in any case, any talk about Kadabra is not to be taken as words about Yuri. With all that out of the way, Kadabra is an abomination! A tail of this size is no mere coincidence. As we know from my Slowpoke vid, Psychic type tails are important. Add in the fact that Alakazam is the only member of this line without a tail, and I think this leads to something interesting. You see, a gargantuan tail like Kadabra's is possibly from an unstable body. Something critically is wrong with Kadabra. It's constantly struggling to live as it is, and I will now explain why. You see, Abra spend a lot of their time being isolated from humans and Pokemon for safety reasons as it grows. Sleep is an important part of growth, and wouldn't you know it, the Pokedex agrees with me that Abra spends a lot of time sleeping. This sleep that Abra does is a way to enhance the psychic energy within its body. Whether it is drawing in life force energy or amplifying its organs for growth hormones, it is building up energy and fast. Too fast. Kadabra is the result of too much psychic energy. The tail, which helps store the energy, is so large as Kadabra's body is desperate to not exploit from the energy. The star and lions are also manifestations of this excess energy. Kadabra is overflowing with too much psychic energy. There is one part of its design though that does help it. The spoon. Now, there are twisted spoons in the Pokemon world that enhance the Psychic type's power, but how do you think they came to be? Instead of enhancing Kadabra's power, this spoon could be a way to limit the psychic energy. Sort of like some weighted shoes to slow down. If the spoons get discarded, that's how you get twisted spoons. But back to Kadabra. So, one spoon is enough to slow down the growth. And yes, Kadabra is still growing. So, now we can get to the life cycle of Abra. Abra spends its days resting and teleporting away from danger. As it grows, it finds a small object that is decently durable. A strong stick, a spoon, a stress ball, You name it. As it evolves into Cadaver, the psychic energy that was within Abra starts to accelerate at a rapid pace, causing strange deformities in Cadaver's body. To limit the growth, psychic energy is channeled into the object it had found. This is fine for a while, but it doesn't last long. Picking up another object, such as a second spoon, does not stop the growth. There is only one option left. The tail must go. I will leave it up to your imagination, but let's just say that the tail is gone and Cadaver is not looking the happiest. Hopefully Cadaver has some good objects that make the process less tedious or painful. Without the tail, the psychic energy will have a limit. A limit that is controlled by the objects that the new Pokemon, Alakazam, has. It will never mutate or lose control again. If Cadaver didn't lose its tail, it's hard to say what would happen, but either its mind or its body would be absent. For all intents and purposes, the Cadaver that was there would be dead. If you are wondering about any scar tissue from the removal of the tail, the move recover is a forceful stimulation of cells that promotes replacement cell growth to essentially regenerate. Also, Mega Alakazam is overflowing with more energy, this time from the Mega Stone, and so it picks up more objects to help limit its power. Overall, I think this makes sense. This theory would technically mean that Cadaver is stronger than Alakazam in terms of psychic capabilities, however it would have one of many adverse effects and would not be able to control its power for long. The armor part of its designs perhaps indicate a rivalry between another Pokemon. Who it is, we don't know. But I will say that if, for example, the object that Abra picks up is a sword, perhaps enough psychic energy would allow for a new Pokemon to be born. In any case, that's it for my theory. Does it make sense, or are there potholes? Have you got alternative ideas about Cadaver and its family? You can let me know down below. I would like to thank you for watching. G'day there, ladies and ledians. Welcome back to Pokemon Links, where we connect the dots with theories. Now this series is supposed to be covering the Easter eggs that Game Freak don't want to openly admit. Today's episode is something I don't think they really thought of. Even still, it led me down an interesting rabbit hole, so I wanted to share my thoughts. I hope you enjoy. So, we are all familiar with the protagonist of Pokemon, aren't we? A bit of a blank slate character that you can sometimes dress up as you take on the evil team and become champion. So, what is special about the player that they are able to accomplish these things? Is it the lack of a father? No, that can't be it. What about being a new kid in the region? Possibly, but I doubt it. What about if we connected the player's success to their somewhat inability to speak? Now there's a connection worth exploring, so let's do that, shall we? So, first we need to establish that the player can't speak. Perhaps a better phrasing would be can't communicate. You are occasionally able to say yes or no to questions, but that's about it. Sometimes not even that. We all have that memory of a game where you keep saying no over and over again and just be stuck in a loop. Even though you are saying no, you are still inevitably saying yes. It's a scary world when no means yes. But it's almost like your voice is not really heard. You don't have a voice, if that makes sense. Well, what about your Pokemon? You have to give commands to your Pokemon so they can battle. This could be explained as the Pokemon just fighting intuitively with you. Two bodies, one mind kind of thing. Also, the text that says, go blank, is the same kind of voice that gives you updates in the battle. I doubt the player is saying, it's super effective, or explaining how stats are reduced. So, for battles, we can say that the voice of the text is an external narrator rather than the player. Hope that makes sense. So, why does this matter if the player can't really speak? There are plenty of games where you play as a silent protagonist. The only difference here is that sound has power. You think about all the sound-based moves, and also the soundproof ability, and you realise that sound has power in this world. It goes further though. There are Pokemon out there that clearly don't have ears or the soundproof ability, but are still affected by sound moves. Mechanically, this is because Pokemon can only have one ability at a time, so not every Pokemon can have soundproof at any given time. But in the universe, it could be because of how sound works. You see, with sound, it's basically just vibrations in the air that is interpreted by your ear. You can still feel the sound even if you can't hear it. Try to remember a time when you were listening to music and could feel your heart beat a little bit louder. Or how a small object on a loudspeaker will move a bit. That's because of the vibrations. Also, a little fun fact, because of how sound works, you can't hear anything in space. So every time you hear an explosion in space in a movie, just know that the sound is there for your benefit. Okay, so now we are able to treat sound as vibrations. Perhaps these vibrations are able to resonate with people? So basically my theory is that the player is suffering from a disability that drastically limits their own vibrations. It is also a pretty common idea that each soul has a unique voice, so really the player has a weak soul. What does this mean? Well, there is a secret power system in the Pokemon world. You project your own soul through vibrations made by your voice onto others. Usually people are able to respond with their own soul and therefore have free will. Since the player's soul is weak, people are able to force opinions onto the player. Think about every time you have been seen from a trainer. In universe, it doesn't make sense why you can't say no. And given how your rivals can go through the same route without an issue, there must be something unique about you. They go, let's battle, and you aren't able to defend yourself, so you have to battle even if you don't want to. Let's take Professor Elm as an example. After accepting to go on a delivery mission, Elm projects the idea of beating all the gym leaders and becoming champion. Bear in mind, you only just got your Pokemon that same day. That's what causes your quest throughout the region. What's crazy is that being champion is basically the world leader in the Pokemon world, even though they don't use their power to do much. Elm is basically grooming you into becoming the next world leader, and you can't say no. We now have a reason for the player to begin their quest and be on the side of good. What allows them to be the evil team and become champion? What if I told you that there was another power at play here? You see, in the early generations, certain badges gave your Pokemon a boost in different stats. Now, are the badges magical? Maybe, but even if not, this still works. You can think of the badges as a confidence boost to your soul, which then is transferred by your connection to your Pokemon. This is where the player's disability is turned into a strength. See, it's kind of weird that people would turn to you to solve their issues. Why not get a gym leader or Elite Four member to help out? Well, as we have established, they have more agency to say no, which creates conflict and sometimes an inability to do anything. While your soul was very malleable at the start, by gaining badges and confidence, you have sculpted a strong soul that surpasses others. Those on your journey are able to recognize this and therefore ask you to help out because you are the only one to now project your desires onto others. You are able to reach out to the evil team. You are able to command your Pokemon effectively to overthrow the champ. Your power of silence was at first a disability, but became your greatest strength. So, that's it for my theory. Again, I doubt Game Freak was really thinking about this, but I found the topic pretty interesting, which is all that matters. And now I've been able to share my interests with you, which is kinda why I'm doing YouTube. There are of course going to be holes in my theory, but I would like to hear what you have to say about it. Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. I'll see you. You and me, Bruce, we're going to go far away. Go talk to her. She likes you. Bruce? Bruce? Bruce! About a week ago, my brother and partner in crime, Solving, disappeared. He was carrying his own egg up until he disappeared without a trace. Wasn't too far off hatching as well. We would have had a niece or nephew by now. It's times like these that a little bite doesn't seem that bad. After all, I can't really work solo. I'm the charm, Bruce is the brain. Is it possible that this was a deliberate attack? We have made our fair share of enemies, but also allies. It doesn't hurt to have a detective on call, you know? All I have to go off with is a sketch of a mark seen on the scene. A coincidence? A gang mark? Oh, Bruce, what did you get into? Okay, I will think about this, I'll see you later. There's at least one criminal in the city, and I am the only one that has a chance at solving it. So in order to solve this case, I need to track down that sketch artist. That's say no more than they're letting on.
Morning, Detective.
Morning, lady.
Detective Lay! Good to see you out and about.
Oh yeah. Hello, Miss A. It's been a while.
Shame about Bruce's egg. I take great pride in babysitting. There's one less baby to look after in this world. Oh, hearing me. Sorry to make you frown. I'll be heading off, places to be and all.
Last time I saw her, someone has made her happy. Very happy. It's honestly...
Hey, it's Lei. Pow pow.
Ouch! Watch it there, champ.
Relax, man. You're the only one around here that can take any of my punches. What do you say about sparring with me, huh? Never hurts to be a bit stronger.
I'm not exactly the fighter type. Still, I'm surprised you know your type match up.
Gotta be strong in the brain as well as the arm. Or arms? There's a saying somewhere that I'm missing.
Now is not exactly a good time for me. Maybe later. Hey, do you know where that artist guy is? I want to talk to him about something.
No clue. But there is always one guy that can find that info.
Thank you, but
Not you. Gotta talk to Leon.
I don't really like his tactics.
Up to you, man. Anyway, laters.
Enter.
Hi, Leon. I am...
Detective Lei. I already know.
I see. I don't suppose you know why I'm here.
I can take a guess.
Look, I was told you might be able to help me. Bruce and his egg are dead. I mean, missing. The sketch artist knows something, and I was... You know what? Never mind. I'll do it myself.
Might want to look into Miss Say. I don't trust someone that happy.
Oh. Well, thank you.
Leave. Now.
Okay, Miss Say. What are you up to? You can go anywhere in an airport. Are you escaping?
May I help you?
What?
Ticket, please.
Sorry. Where is that plane headed to?
To Galar, of course.
Gala. But isn't that illegal? For guys like me?
Nah, not really. Just some health issues occasionally. I'll tell you what, your first flight is free. Let's see your footprint.
No, sorry. I don't want to go. Wait. Footprint?
Suit yourself. Probably best not to hang around here.
Before I leave, can I ask for your footprint?
Excuse me?
I have a hunch about this book. It might be a footprint. If your footprint matches, then that means that you were there when Bruce disappeared.
Look, detective, if it'll make it easier for you, then here. Look, see? Doesn't match even a little.
Sorry for disturbing you. I'm heading off now. Oh, Bruce. I don't know where to go or where to look. You know, maybe I should just stop. Move on with my life.
I wouldn't quit yet, friend.
Ah, gone. Good to see you. You always have my back.
Just as you have mine, friend. No need to stress. Take a moment to relax.
You know, you are pretty fly, Gone. It's hard to believe you are a fellow bug type sometimes.
Yes, friend. Look, have some candy. On me.
No, you really shouldn't. I still have some from last time. It gives me some nasty nightmares.
My business is done here, then. Farewell, friend.
There must be something I'm missing here. Egg? Footprint? Candy? No. Egg? Footprint? No brain. No candy. Egg? Footprint? Candy. Egg? Footprint? Candy. That's it! I've got to go now.
Detective. Wanna go around?
No, champ. I'm working at the moment.
Then why are you here?
Like I said, I'm working.
Why don't you just share how you figured it out? I thought I was pretty smart about it all.
You covered your tracks pretty well, but in hindsight, it could only have been you. Called a stroke of luck, but it all came together. You see, I was staring at the Rage candy bar on my desk.
Detective. Didn't think you would stoop so low.
Yeah, this is about you, dummy. Anyway, the exact origins of the various candies have been a mystery for a while. I think I have managed to unravel it. You see, in the ancient past, there was an event called the Darkest Day. I'm a giant hand! In one day, half of all known Mon were removed from Gala.
Mr. Ark, I don't feel so good.
It is also weird how there's so much candy in Gala. While someone did get turned into candy, there is more to it. You see, back in 1996, there was a rare candy epidemic going around. Nobody knew where the candy came from, but after rearranging a file on my desk, it was clear. Missing no.
Yeah? What does that have to do with me, huh?
I remember a young Machoke that was struggling against some opponents. Your quick growth spurt wasn't so natural after all, it seems. Galar is a quarantine zone for the Mon that were impacted by the Darkest Day. Slowly, more Mon are able to rejoin the region, but there are a few Mon that are still affected. What might happen to such a Mon if they were to go to Galar? They would turn into Missing No. You wanted more kin. You wanted to get stronger. You needed a Mon that could help by turning into Missing No. Why not a ledian? While you're at it, why not the smart one? You took Bruce to Galar and turned him into Missing No. It was a bit weird that you knew your time matchup. Almost as if you battled Bruce.
Perhaps I got the wrong one. I can't let you leave.
Dynamic Punch!
You're confused, Detective. What about the egg? What happened to it? What the? There's more of you?
Swarm ability. Guess you didn't read enough about me. Excuse me, ma'am. 9 plus 10. 21?
Get off me. Wait, they're gone.
You're not you when you're hungry.
Enough of this. One pebble is all it will take.
You wouldn't. That's a death sentence.
I know. Now just walk away and be a good detective.
I guess it's a good thing your gym is dirty.
Why you? I wouldn't do that if I were you. You should know that I never miss.
Leon! You came at the right time. Look, champ. This footprint matches with part of your foot. Even if you got rid of me, your fate is sealed. Now, about that egg. I believe you're expecting someone right about now, right? Whoever walks through that door is your accomplice.
Drat.
Oh, you won't believe my day. Oh, hello there.
Hi, Miss Say. I wouldn't run if I were you. You were the one that sold Bruce's egg and smuggled it into Galar, weren't you?
It was all him, I swear, he made me do it.
I think I've had enough. You're both under arrest. Oh, and champ, pow! I can learn Dynamic Punch as well. Like I said, I'm working.
Gotta be strong in the brain as well as the arm. Or arms? There's a saying somewhere that I'm missing.
Oh, you won't believe my day. Oh, hello there.
You should know that I never miss.
To Galar, of course.
Look, have some candy. On me.
Morning, Detective.
Mr. Ark, I don't feel so good.
Morning, lady. I'm a giant hand. And so that is the finale of this season of Pokemon Ledians. A special thanks to all those within the small PokeTuber club that assisted me with their voices. There are still plenty of secrets Game Freak are trying to hide from us, and there is only one person that is going to uncover them. Don't you dare say Leon. Anyway, I would like to thank you for watching. I'll see you later.